Hey everyone, welcome back to the Atavus Football Show. As always, I'm Jake Swilly along with my man Scott Lawyer. Scotty, how you doing today?
Jake, what's up, man? We got the college rankings out, so a lot to unpack from that. So let's get into it.
Yeah, like you said, we got a lot to talk about today, and that's going to be our two main topics really today in the news. And like I said, going through the first official college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday, as well as the big news in the NFL, the big event, the trade deadline on Tuesday as well. So we're going to recap what the top 25 that matters now looks like, and our thoughts on that, and then also recap the last minute trades that were made on this Monday and Tuesday before the deadline. But so yeah, like Scott said, let's get right into it. But first, as always, let's start off with our In the Spotlight series, where again we have another tackle clip for you this week.
Okay, so we got Liberty Christian out of Texas. Shout out to Coach Jason Witten, head coach over there, doing a great job. Winning district championship the first time in 16 years. So that's big time. And they're doing it with plays like this, like number 10, doing a great job of closing space, eating up that preventable yards, beating that blocker, and then a great shoulder-led tackle. Good leg drive, showing some good emotion right there. So I love plays like this, and I had a bunch of them last Saturday in their win. So shout out to Coach Witten and the Liberty Christian team over there in Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. Love seeing that. Shout out again, like Scott was saying. Great to see that. The other thing about that clip I love is if you watch through it. Actually, let's watch it again real quick. Let me pull it up for us. I think the part that gets undercoached that we talk about a lot is if you see in the beginning, it's a safety tracking down 10 to 12 yards from that spot, is able to continually close that space and avoid that blocker as we would, an obstacle as we look at it in our eyes.
Right.
Because he continues to close space effectively, he's able to not let that runner make a move right when he catches the ball. Again, those tackles in space are very hard to deal with and handle. Right. So I think along with like the points you made of the near foot, near shoulder, and that great strike, really being able to, close that space, I think was key to give him that confidence to make that play successful. So shout out again, Liberty Christian as well. Congratulations. Looking forward to seeing what you guys can do in the next coming weeks. So we'll keep an eye out for sure and keep you guys updated. Let's move now. Like I said, we're gonna get right into it. Let's go to the college football scene. Lots of news, obviously with the new playoff rankings coming out. But first, let's look at this past weekend and let's look at the scoreboard. So Scott, recap for us what Week 9 looked like and the big takeaways you got from it.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia taking care of business. Bennett is just a veteran quarterback. He doesn't do anything flashy, but he puts the ball in the right place. They run the ball effectively, and they got those two tight ends. 6'7", about 250 or something crazy. And they got the other guy who's more like kind of like a Swiss Army knife. He can do some reverses. He can get yards after the catch. So I like what they're doing with that two tight end set over there in Georgia. And in Tennessee, taking care of business. I mean, they look legit. Hooker and that defense also being able to shut down Levis over in Kentucky, who's going to potentially a top pick at quarterback, and they made him look pretty mediocre. So I think Tennessee is for real. And we talked about that matchup last week. And then moving down the list, TCU taking care of business. That quarterback receiver combo with Johnson and Duggan are just keep on putting points up and playing at a high level. Oregon, Bo Nix is not slowing down. He's looks poised back there. He's running the ball, throwing it with accuracy. You really can't. I can't hate too much on the Ducks right there. And then USC taking care of business against Arizona. But remember, I mentioned last week that quarterback, he can put some points on the board over in Arizona. He's a former he's a former quarterback for the Cougars and at Wazoo, and he was throwing the ball around a couple of years and knocked the Huskies off. So he's mobile, and they gave him a little bit tougher look over there in LA. And then UCLA taking care of business against Stanford. Moving over to the right hand side, you got Utah did a great job last Thursday. I think we talked about that one. Illinois beating Nebraska, and then lastly we have the NC State still poised in the ACC doing their thing. So overall this weekend showed a lot in terms of what the college football playoffs were looking for, and I think that will we'll be able to talk more about that in the coming slides. But yeah, a lot of a lot of things kind of shaking down next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think other things that will come into play here in a second when we talk about it is a couple other key games from this past weekend. But we see Kansas State shutting out Oklahoma State, ranked number 9, a 48-0 win. You also see Notre Dame getting the win against Syracuse. They'll have a big game again coming up. They've been up and down all year. A big game coming up this weekend against Clemson. Maybe they can start making a push to get back in the top 25, or maybe kind of be a wrecker in the college football playoff the way they're kind of playing right now. So, lots of shakeups, I think, from this weekend that kind of influenced the CFP. And so let's just get straight into that right now then. So we're going to go through section by section, the top 25, and we'll review it all at the end. So first, let's start with the bottom part of the college football playoff top 25. Again, these are the real rankings that count going into the final part of the year, where the final 4 teams and the major 6 bowl games get picked from. And so 19 through 25, Scott, what are your thoughts? I think you might have a hot take a little bit, maybe to those in the Pac-12 on a certain team here, but give us your thoughts initially first on this 19 through 25.
Right. So, first thing that sticks out to me is, the Oregon State, the Beavers over there at number 23. And no hate, obviously, they're a great, well-coached team. They got my former coaches, Jonathan Smith, doing a great job. But I just think in terms of who they've beaten, their strength of schedule, it's a very tough sell, especially when you got, Washington, for example, who they played them tonight. They beat a formerly ranked Michigan State team and pretty single-handedly opened up, 4-0. But also, the Dogs have let the foot off the gas a little bit. That's probably what's factoring in. But even like common opponents like Stanford and all those, just in terms of like the final outcome and points being tied into that, I just don't see how that factors in. But what I do like about Oregon State, though, is that defense as well. They got really good corners on the outside that are shutting things down, and they're playing good football overall. Not the flashiest team, but I was a little bit shocked, Jake, to see him at 23rd. But yeah, Tulane's doing their thing. Syracuse has been really surprising this year. But then also Texas. You look at a team like Texas who it's kind of like up and down, right?
They came right on the border of the top 25, in and out, it seems like, over the last few weeks.
Right. And let's pull up who Texas has next coming week. So, Texas, I believe who they have, Jake. Take a look real quick. I'll pull up the schedule. So they play Kansas State, right, who just had a pretty, dynamic win against Oklahoma State, I believe, because they got that Martinez at quarterback, and then that guy Deuce Vaughn, I think his name is, at running back, about 5'9", maybe, Jake, but he's explosive, and he's been doing that to a lot of Big 12 schools for the last couple of years. It's very sneaky, offensively savvy team, and then they got TCU next week, right? And then Kansas and Baylor, final 2 weeks, who are no slumps. They're always going to play them tough. So, I don't know. Maybe they're doing it based on the eye test a little bit with Texas, but you can't also say that because they've, in some of those bigger games or even, matchups where they had the upper hand, they haven't performed. So you have to see how they, they get their, their defense and their tackling right.
Yep.
Also, their quarterback has been a little bit inconsistent, although he has a very talented arm. He missed some games with that injury. They have a great running back, probably top running back in the nation, I would say. So it's like, can they get all those things to mesh together at the period of the season and show them that they are, on paper, they are a top 25 team, but I'm not seeing it on film. So that's what I'm saying in terms of the top, these final 6 teams we're looking at, final 6 or 7. There's a couple of ones that stood out to me, Jake.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you on the Oregon State. Again, all the praise of what they're doing out there, having a great season so far. But I think you're right with the Washington comparison, 6-2, and their 2 losses being, you mentioned the Michigan State wins, but the 2 losses, one of them being to, not a good loss against Arizona State. We all know that, but the other loss being to not the best game, but still to a number 12 right now UCLA team. So they're no slumps at all either. And so after that, though, good wins against Michigan State. good wins the rest of the year out. And so sitting at the same records, you would think Washington may have the edge. But I think tonight will be the determining factor. If UW can get the win, I think they're in at that point. But yeah, like you mentioned with Texas too, next 2 or 3 weeks, good measuring sticks for them. And I think, and if they were to go 3-0 over these next 3 weeks and beat teams like Kansas State and TCU, they can make a run at that Big 12 title.
Right.
I'm not sure if they have enough firepower in their strength of schedule and where they're sitting right now to make a run in the Final Six, or even the Final Four. But I think at least a run at the Big 12 title, the way Oklahoma State's been up and down recently, when they get to that title game, maybe, and taking care of these other 2 top teams within in their division, can make a run at. But like you said, some inconsistent play, they have to shore up, but we'll see. Okay, let's get to the next tier. We got 13 through 18 here: Kansas State, Utah, Penn State, Illinois, North Carolina, Oklahoma State. Some teams that have kind of been sitting around, aside from Oklahoma State after last week's loss, kind of been sitting around this middle tier all year. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first off, let's talk about Kansas State, who we just mentioned, coming off that blowout win versus Oklahoma State. Because the offense is just explosive. They got a mobile quarterback, like I said, and also a dynamic running back. So they're putting up a lot of points, Jake, and that's where Kansas State has kind of been in the middle of the pack this year, but now they're showing it with big-time wins against ranked opponents as well. Then Utah, we got 5 Pac-12 teams, I think, in here.
Yep.
Utah is one of the ones that I would always expect to be here just because of how well coached they are. They got a veteran quarterback who's also mobile but can put it on a tightrope, and then they have a nice, good big body tight end. This is solid defense, special teams, all 3 phases of the game. Utah has always been historically a really well-coached and disciplined team. So, they got to just have a couple more big wins at the end, but I see them right there at that 14 mark. I think that's fair. And then moving down, let's just talk about Oklahoma State, who we mentioned before. They have Sanders at quarterback, coming off that bad loss. That's why they probably dropped. I think they were in that, top 10 roughly?
Top 10, yeah.
And then just a win like that with your there wasn't many injuries to their team. I didn't see. I mean, they had their guys in there, so I don't really know what happened. But yeah, they just couldn't get things going on offense, turnovers, and then defense. They couldn't stop the run. So that was a lot of things on why we probably see Oklahoma State drop down. And then Penn State is a little bit of a surprise too, Jake, just in terms of kind of some of their losses and I won't say inconsistent play, but the statements, I haven't really seen too much of those. But they're playing this, they're playing enough to be at that middle tier that we're seeing them. So, these are all pretty standard teams that I would kind of expect. But yeah, Kansas State and Oklahoma State are 2 that I think we should look out for as we finish up the season.
Yeah, no, agreed. For sure. And I think it's worth noting here, we didn't mention it before, but North Carolina is the second highest ranked right now ACC team. So outside of Clemson, and with Clemson kind of taking care of those other teams that we saw in that bottom tier, Carolina looks like to be the only team to have a shot at taking the title away from Clemson at this point in the ACC. So that could screw things up at the end as well. So I would keep an eye. Again, they've been kind of up and down all year, but if they're able to find their rhythm as we go into these last few weeks leading up to rivalry week and championship week, I could see them maybe being a spoiler for Clemson if we get to that point and those 2 teams face off. So, all right, let's go to our that next second to last tier we have here, ranking 7 through 12. And now we're getting really into that top 10 section, close to it, with some notable teams that, when we get to the top 10 or 12, a lot of these teams we've been talking about have been here the whole year for the most part, but a couple have made a real push over the last couple weeks. So give us your thoughts, Scott.
Oh, man, I think this is the most intriguing tier that we're going to break down, Jake. I mean, from top to bottom, you have a lot of, dynamic teams, great coaches, good to great coaches there. So we can actually just go down, kind of unpack all these. So TCU, starting with them. We already talked about the quarterback, dark horse for the Heisman run. Yep. he's just doing everything right in terms of running that zone read. Placing the ball with the deep ball to their big body receiver Johnston. He's just making big plays at the big plays, and their defense has always been strong. Like I said, Coach Gillespie over there has them going. Who we had, luxury of meeting down in Texas, and he's a great defensive coach, and that was a great pickup for them to get him this year. Perfect complement to Sonny Dykes' system on offense and what he wants to do. They're playing great all around football. Then moving on to Oregon, we have Bo Nix. I think that's the main caveat. He is this, he's doing everything, man. He's running the ball, being efficient, limiting turnovers now. He's playing this great sound football. And Oregon has the weapons. They have the speed. They have the defensive guys in the back end. They got all the makings to be a top 10 team. They just have to put it together and show the board that that week 1 blowout to Georgia wasn't it was just a fluke in a sense. It was a wake up call maybe for them. And then USC, who's kind of I'm not going to say sputtered a little bit, but their offensive on the offensive side of the ball, they haven't been being as explosive, or they haven't been able to put up all these big time wins in the last few weeks. But overall, they have the receivers, they have the quarterback, they have the coach, and you have those two things, really a quarterback and a coach that are top 5. You can go a lot of places, right? Would you agree that Lincoln Riley and Williams are probably one of the top quarterback coaches tandems in college football? Jake, would you agree?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think you have the continuity there over the last couple of years with them, and their high level of as a performance as a coach and as a player combined is, I'd say they're one of the best. I think it's a key factor into some of these teams going forward.
Right. Then LSU over in the SEC, you got Coach Kelly. So I know he took a bad rap for his fake accent, to start the season. And they've been kind of inconsistent as well. But, I mean, at the end of the day, they're playing just sound football. They're staying within games, also taking care of business on when they have to. So I look out for them to kind of stay. I would say they kind of stay within that 10 to 12 mark, depending on the next couple weeks. But, LSU's playing some good football. And I think Ole Miss also is kind of a unique team because they have, Lane Kiffin. They have a quarterback to transfer from USC, young quarterback, great offensive system. I think they're dangerous as well. And then lastly, we saw what UCLA is capable of. Chip Kelly, a dynamic quarterback, mobile and DTR. Like he is, he's kind of reminds me like a Kyler Murray in a sense of college football, where when he turns that corner, he's dangerous. And I think a lot of teams it's hard for him to game plan against someone like that. A lot of times you can game plan against a great, good pocket quarterback, or even maybe a guy that's more of a, can break the pocket and scramble. You can do spies and do certain things like that. But it's kind of hard to game plan for a guy like that at UCLA, where he turns that corner, Jake. It's, one guy miss and he can go for 15, 20 yards, right? Mm-hmm. So he can hurdle you. He can go around you. He has that stop and start speed that's hard to coach against. So like I said before, this middle tier right here is probably the most compelling of the tiers that we're going to break down.
Yeah. How many? The way I see it, I only see a handful of teams, if that, or a couple that are real, quote unquote, like legitimate in my eyes. I think some of the other ones that are at this spot, I still am not 100% sold on yet. Are there any teams that you would say are like the real, have a chance to really make a push going forward? My two teams, I think, are not because they're ranked where they are, but I think TCU and Oregon do have a legitimate ability to push forward for that Final Four spot. I'm not confident right now in SC, LSU, Ole Miss, and UCLA, just based on how they've kind of been up and down at times this year,
right,
with their play. But any teams for you out of this bunch that you can see making a push for that top 6 or top 4?
Jake, I would say honestly, TCU for sure, but then I would disagree with you. I would go USC. Just looking at the rest of their schedule, I think they're on a bye this week, but they have Colorado and then UCLA, which is actually the perfect chance to show what they're made of. Depending on how UCLA does this upcoming weekend, I mean, that could turn out to be a pretty telling game, right? You would think maybe they take care of Colorado, but like I said, that last rivalry matchup against UCLA, if they can make a statement there, Jake, and finish this thing, with 2 really strong wins, I could see them kind of, honestly challenging some teams in that top 5 to even 4 range, Jake. So I'm going to kind of go a little contrary, but I do think that since I just mentioned that quarterback coach dynamic, I think that's one of the unique things that sometimes the college football rankings look for, stuff like that, like they factor in some of those things, coaching, quarterback play, and then also, strength schedule and big time wins and stuff like that. So beating UCLA to finish up the season would bode really well for USC.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, let's unpack then the top 6. Again, nothing in terms of the top 6 recently that's changed in terms of who's in it, but obviously a drastic change and a switch in power at the top, with Tennessee now taking the number 1 spot and moving Georgia to 3. So what are your initial thoughts on this top 6? Do you agree with it? There's a lot of controversy here based on what we've seen, but give us your thoughts initially.
You know what? I do think that Tennessee has earned the right to be number 1 right now. I do see Georgia as like number 2 though, at least. Number 2.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's very thin margin between Tennessee and Georgia, in my opinion. But that big time win against Alabama, and then the dynamic quarterback play, and they have a receiver that can stretch the field and be explosive and take a 60, go for a 60-yard bomb every other possession. That's pretty damn dynamic. So I do think Tennessee does deserve that number 1 spot. And then you have a team like Ohio State, who was, like I said, was playing Penn State pretty close. I believe Penn State was up possession with like 7-8 minutes to go, and then the young defensive man, I forget his name, but he's from out here in Washington, guy. He just goes off, right? Strip sack, interception, fumbles. He was all around, kind of a breakout game for him. But that's what turned the tides, and kind of was an avalanche from there for Penn State, and they just couldn't get out of their own way. So Ohio State did, you do what you got to do to win the game, and they have the offensive side, but I think the defense last week showed that they can also be game changers. And like I mentioned with Georgia, they have, good quarterback, veteran quarterback, and then a really good offensive game plan. They want to run the ball, get in that 12 to 13 personnel. Sometimes they'll have 3, even 4 tight ends out there. You'll look. And they want to just run the ball and also use a play action and get the ball to their big body tight ends and receivers. So I think Georgia will definitely, especially with that defense, I would see them probably being able to outbid Ohio State for that number 2 spot. And I think some of the Clemson, right, Jake, is some of the people are kind of
there's some controversy right now around Clemson getting the number 4 spot. Not even so much with the number 5 and 6, Michigan and Bama, but in those teams, which we can talk about in a second as well. But with TCU in particular at number 7, 2 undefeated teams, making the claim that those teams outside of the top 4 have some better wins that are undefeated than Clemson does. But
I don't see how. For me, Clemson has done everything they're supposed to do. I don't think they have gone above and beyond of what they were expected or what other teams in those rankings have shown. I mean, because you look at their schedule and even the outcomes of the game, they've had some pretty tight games, right? So, they take care of Georgia Tech start week 1. Then they beat a Furman team 35-12. La Tech 48-20. Then they have a overtime win against Wake Forest, who was ranked at the time, but still closer than they wanted to be. And then they beat NC State, who's a good team. They beat them 30-20. And then you have wins from Boston State, Florida State, Syracuse, beating them by 6 points last weekend. So it's like I don't really see those dynamic wins or just like dominant performances. But I know the ACC is a little bit down this year, Jake, but still, like you would think they'd be, blowing cats out the water, but it's not. It's not been that. So they play Notre Dame next tomorrow. They have Louisville. So I just don't know, man. I mean, I would say that with all those things factoring in, Jake, with those, I'm just looking for them to live up to that potential and that hype, and they just haven't done it, in my opinion. So I do see, honestly, I see Michigan, and I would say Michigan probably has the best case to kind of slip up in the top four. And I know Alabama won't like that, but it's kind of their game to lose as well with Alabama. I think, if they have some statement wins, I would see it kind of hard, Jake, for them to leave Alabama out. But, at the end of the day, if they're trying to get, I think Michigan State deserves that. Michigan, deserves that fourth spot if Clemson doesn't take care of business or it comes down to any close final decisions. I don't know, man. It's going to be tough. But what do you think about the –
Yeah, you kind of stole the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, I think Tennessee has the right based on their wins and their just overall performance, right? They've had strong performances too to be number one. But I'm with you. I don't think Ohio State has done enough to really cement themselves as a number two. I would put Georgia at number two. Aside from the Missouri close call, right? They're still taking care of business the whole year. They have a blowout win against who is now a number 8 Oregon. So and this week will be a telling one as well, and we'll get into that schedule here in a second. But yeah, I have them at number 2 in my eyes. I have Ohio State 3, and then I probably as well put Michigan. Right now, I put Michigan at number 4. I think Michigan is taking care of business most of the year. We're getting Clemson's played some ranked teams, but they haven't taken care of business like you would want them to, right? Close games, overtime games, stuff that's not the classic Clemson that would scream what a number 4 team should be, how they should be performing. So I know that right now the talk is TCU and Clemson. Which one of those deserves to be in. I still think that's a close call because although Clemson hasn't performed as well as you want them to, they still have wins over 3 or 4 top 25 teams. Right now, top 25 teams with Syracuse, NC State, and Wake Forest. So I probably still keep them at 5 and Bama at 4, but TCU or Bama at 6, excuse me. But TCU could make an easy jump. I can see that argument there for a top 6 for them at least.
Right.
So let's look real quick then at the overall rankings comparatively. We got into some of the controversy. Again, Clemson and TCU. Which one has the better wins? Both undefeated. Kind of talk through what our top 6 would be like, but when you look at it as a whole, side by side, any final points or notes you want to point out to us?
No, I think we hit on everything, Jake. Like I mentioned, tonight's gonna be big for the Dogs. I'll be at the game to check out them take on the Beavers, who, honestly, it's always been pretty close games with Oregon State. I always remember when I played too. They were giving some tough matchups, dating all the way back to my freshman year. I think we played them. They were always just a really tough matchup for us. So we'll see. It's going to be an ugly game with the weather. So we'll see how our offense kind of is able to shift that high passing, what they want to do with that passing offense, and maybe have to shift the game plan to a little bit more, run heavy, try to chew the clock out and kind of, condense the game down in a sense. So we'll see, man. But those corners for the Beavers are strong. And then, and then we got TCU. I'm really going to be watching them closely because, like you mentioned, I think they're one of those dark horses that can slip into that top 5 to 4 team, right there. And then UCLA, we got to watch them because that's going to really tie into the matchup at the end of the season with USC. As long as UCLA takes care of business and remains ranked, I think that will help USC's case if they, have a strong showing to finish the season. But overall, man, this is exciting. This is why you watch college football.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned one of the matchups. Let's take a look at the rest of them for this weekend. Aside from Oregon State, Washington, that's a big matchup tonight. There's a few matchups that are very significant right now. The most prominent up top being Tennessee versus Georgia, 1 versus 3.
Wow.
we can touch on that in a sec. But the other one, Bama LSU 6-10, and then Clemson, an unranked Notre Dame as of now, but Notre Dame gets a good win last week.
Right.
They have a couple other good. They've been up and down this year for sure, but always a threat, always a good team, ranked high in the beginning of the year. And with this talk between TCU and Clemson, if TCU continues to take care of business this week and throughout the year, and Clemson has maybe an underperforming game or a loss even this weekend, I think the argument is more valid to swap TCU and Clemson. But let's talk real quick. Just Tennessee and Georgia. Do you think? We think in our eyes they're 1-2. Right now they're 1-3. If Tennessee, is there any scenario where Tennessee stays in the top 4 if they were to lose? Because that's two powerhouses right now. Easily either team could win, or Georgia even. Is there any scenario if either of the teams lose to stay in that top 4?
Honestly, I think no. Yeah, which kind of contradicts what I said earlier. But I didn't even realize they played each other this weekend, so that's my fault. But yeah, they that would be a tough sell, especially when you got Nick Saban breathing down your neck and and also TCU. So honestly, Jake, I don't think there's a scenario where they both stay in. It would definitely cause a lot of controversy, but both unbeaten, right, Jake? So if maybe you see a close game, 24, 27 type game, maybe. I can see that happening with both of these defenses and kind of how these offenses want to play. I think could be, but I think it's unlikely with the likes of like a team like Michigan, Alabama, and TCU waiting in the back seat.
Yeah, agreed. I think if Bama wins, they jump one of those teams, and maybe even Clemson and Michigan for that last top 4 spot next week, just because of a top 10 win against LSU. But yeah, we shall see. It's going to be interesting this weekend. These 3 or 4 games in particular that could have a major impact over the next few weeks in the final rankings as we get into the end of the year. So let's move down to the NFL. The other main storyline was the trade deadline. But first, let's recap again what the last week looked like in terms of games that we saw. Only 2 teams on bye, so we're packed with games. Yeah, I think the ones to pull out here is you got the Thursday night game from last week, Bucks and Ravens. Tom Brady falling to 3-5 for the first time in his career. The Broncos finally get a win overseas in London. Panthers, disappointing loss the way it happened in the game as well. Just looking through the rest of the games here. Saints able to shut out the Raiders, which had a lot of fantasy owners that upset for sure, including you. But unexpected for sure. Jets, Patriots falter against the Bears before in week 7. Come back week 8 strong against the Jets. So we'll see if the Jets are for real moving forward, especially this week against Buffalo. Eagles roll. They were obviously last night in the Thursday night game, continue to roll as well. And then, we'll talk about our games in a sec, but Seahawks, on my end, 27-13 win over the Giants. I know some people, and I'm kind of with on this bandwagon too. I don't know how legit the Giants are in terms of making a strong push in the playoffs. I think they have a strong chance for it, but I don't see them as a top tier team, even though their record would show that. But I think the way we're performing right now is we just had 3 players named players of the month. We had the offensive player of the month, the offensive player of the month for rookies, defensive rookie player of the month, and then the offensive player of the month overall with Geno. So I think our offense is operating on a high efficient. I think we're top 4 right now in points per game, surprisingly enough, right? And our defense has gotten back to about average or above average, which is, if we just stay there, I think we have a good shot against any team. And going forward, our strength of schedule favors us as well. But last week at home, able to take care of business and shut down Barkley a little bit in that offense to an extent. But
so, Jake, let me ask you, since we're on the topic of the Seahawks, let me just ask you, you guys are kind of playing with house money in a sense, because I don't think you guys, you know this. You didn't really expect to be here at this point. You had a bunch of young guys. You thought you was kind of a rebuild year, but no, they're playing really well under Geno Smith. They got the two dynamic receivers still, and then a lot of rookies, on the outside of the tackle positions. They got two rookies that are doing a great job. They got Kenneth Walker, who we talked about last week, Tariq Woolen on the outside. Like, you guys got a lot of good, promising players, but you guys are also winning games. And then also you have the top, what, 5 to right now, and the Broncos won, but that's looking like a top 10 pick at least, right, Jake? From the Broncos.
As of right now, I think it's still top 10. It was 5 or 6 last week. I don't know where it is after their win, but it's still probably top 10 for sure.
Yeah. So given that how many quarterbacks are coming out this next year's draft, and you're going to have a top 10 pick, if you're the Seahawks organization, what are you doing? Are you extending Geno and investing in maybe, let's say, a linebacker or an edge player, a premium position in the top 10? Or are you going to invest in a quarterback and let Geno walk? So that's part one of my question. I know there's a few parts to that. But let's say if you're keeping Geno, how much do you pay Geno to stay?
Oh, boy.
I've heard a lot of controversy about what he would demand in the market, given that he's, has been a backup most of his year, and he has to kind of cash in, which I get. He has to kind of cash in on this season, right?
He's over. Yeah, I can't blame him from that perspective as a player.
Two questions in one.
Let's see. So let's start with our plan let's start with the quarterback plan, or the reason for our success. I think one of the reasons for our success is Geno is playing much better than expected. I think that's for sure. And the offense, the structure of it complements him well. Now our defense is starting to perform better. But you mentioned it; those rookies being thrown in there, I think, are a big reason why we are able we're playing as well as we are right now. Because surprisingly, even though some were first round, second round picks, right, where you expect to perform well, I think the fact that we've hit on this many as of so far this season, the way they're playing is a big surprise and a big reason why we are performing as well as we are, because those were positions we had issues with, cornerback, tackle on the offensive line on each side, right? The uncertainty at running back with only Penny at the time, Carson going down, before the draft. So I think the fact that they've been able to fill in those gaps as well as they have has really supplemented the team well to be able to perform to the level we're at. Because if we only had one or two, I think, performing on maybe one side of the ball or one on each, then we'd see a little dip in play. But I think that's the biggest reason we've been able to perform to our level that we're at right now, help Geno, especially on the offense with those tackles. But in terms of what we do at quarterback, I still got to do a little more digging into the quarterback prospects this year. I don't see Geno as our long-term franchise quarterback. Again, he's been 10 years in the league, right? So even though he's been a backup most of those times, it's still 10 years of a little bit of wear, and you don't expect to pay big money to a guy who's going to be, you don't expect a 10-year guy to be here for the next 5 to 7 years as a franchise guy and pay him big money. You want to probably invest in a younger quarterback. So ideally, I would like us to see. I don't know if, again, I'm not sold on some of the quarterbacks prospects that they're projected first round, such as Stroud and Young and those guys. If we're able to get a quarterback, if we get like a Hendon Hooker, who maybe goes, second round, that we can get there, someone like that. I think that would be ideal.
Okay.
We are still missing a couple pieces on the defense, like outside backer / edge, which Will Anderson, those other guys would be great fill-ins. But we do need, whether it's this year or next year, a quarterback, a young quarterback draft pick if we have the draft capital. But if we can extend or sign to another year or two deal of Geno to kind of cover that gap until our rookie is ready. So right now, I believe Geno's on a $3 million contract. Again, on a 1 or 2 for maybe, I don't know, 6 to 8. Yeah, maybe 10. I don't.
He ain't gonna take it. I don't think, because let's say like.
But how many spots are there How many spots for him are there in the league right now? Right?
There's a
lot of good quarterbacks in the league, so he doesn't have a lot. It's not like he has a lot to pick from.
Leverage, right?
Either, right?
He could be a glorified backup, high-end backup, and make. I would think though he's probably gonna try to break it open to like I would say around a 2-year, probably like 25 plus. So you're looking at like 13 to 15K per
Yeah,
year.
but does 1 year justify a major contract? I know we've seen teams do it in the past, but
I think, I think they're gonna do. I think based on the market, that might. I don't know. I mean, that would actually leverage. That would. The Seahawks would probably have the leverage there based on his market, and also the fact that they could draft a young quarterback and develop him under Geno, because you wouldn't want to be paying him any more than that if he's going to be a backup, potentially within a year or two anyway. So I think, he's going to want about 14 to 15 mil per year, but they'll probably settle somewhere in between that 10 to 12 mark per year.
Yeah, so he is a free agent after this year. I think you have to have a plan already. If you're the Seahawks, already have a plan in place, at least at the end of the year, if you're drafting a quarterback this year or not, because obviously free agency starts, he's going to be a hot commodity, right. At least as a high-level backup, if not maybe a starter to a struggling team, maybe like the Texans or someone, right? But obviously that hits, free agency hits before the draft does, and so you got to have a plan in place of whether or not you're going to be drafting a quarterback this year and want to keep Geno or not. So we'll see how that shakes out. But real quick, we hit on my Seahawks, but hit on your Niners. They're kind of rolling right now. Obviously, CMC, we saw all that he can do and be in that offense, which I think is what we all envisioned. Big win over the Rams in division. But yeah, give us your thoughts on where you guys are at now.
Jake, it's tough because they've lost a lot of winnable games, or in terms of on paper. They should have won, not be in this position where you're, 500 behind the Seahawks. But, they always tend to be more of a second half team of the season. And the good thing is they're rolling into the bye week, looking to get a lot of healthy bodies back, like Elijah Mitchell, for example, our Eric Armstead. And you got maybe Jason Barrett coming back, and you got Greenlaw, and they got a lot of players coming back.
Yeah.
Debo, hopefully, as well, who's big. I think that win was definitely a must-win for the Rams, and the way they did it, featuring McCaffrey and showing, okay, this investment that we did, it paid off, because they didn't have Debo, who historically has, torn the Rams up. So they just replaced him with Christian McCaffrey, who's a Swiss Army knife, the original Swiss Army knife, in recent years. So now you get Debo back, and Ayuk's playing at a really high level. Jimmy had a good game, great game last week, I would say. He did everything he needed to do. Completed over 80% of his passes, I believe. Something crazy, went like 21 for 25. No turnovers. So that's what he does. If he doesn't turn the ball over, we can win games with the team that we have. But it's when Jimmy has those costly or unwarranted turnovers, for some reason, they just really demoralize our team because of the timing in which they happen, is what I would say. We just don't have the type of, right now, the structure to really overcome those turnovers when we really need those momentum swings and to be able to come with play from ahead in a sense. But they were able to play from behind against the Rams, on the road, and they got a really big win because of their big investment in McCaffrey. So I do like where we're at, Jake. And we have a pretty favorable schedule, but that hasn't meant anything in the first 8 weeks. So we'll see how they do. But I like that we're getting healthy, and I do see the tandem of Elijah Mitchell, Elijah Mitchell and McCaffrey. That could be a really nice 1-2 punch, Jake. What do you think?
No, I agree 100%. I think it's a nice 1-2 punch to have, and I think what they did with McCaffrey, adding him, giving up as much as they did, was key, because you're almost hedging your bets on the weapons side, on the offensive side with Garoppolo, right? You're saying not always being on point and those sorts of things, or a Debo being out, right? And
what did he? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Jake.
Oh no, just if sometimes great game last week, but historically not always, a little up and down at times, right? McCaffrey is give him as many weapons as possible, and then they're able to make up for a little bit more of that extra playmaking and the key times. So, and if an injury goes down, McCaffrey can support it, or vice versa with Debo and stuff. So, I think once you guys get healthy, you're already starting to get back on track. Yeah, I can see you guys rolling for a while too. So
because what you did there is when you add McCaffrey, you saw how they used them. Dink and dime, choice routes out in the flats. They obviously had him for that pass to Ayuk, where they used him almost like Debo did last year when they had that little fake, sweep and they throw it over the top and have them bite. But what is Jimmy doing? He's just dinking and diming and letting his weapons get those yak yards. He had one nice deep throw to tight end Ross Dwelly, I believe, but everything else pretty much right around the line of scrimmage, kind of intermediate. Ayuk did a great job over the middle with Debo out, so they have all the weapons. Even Kittle got involved in the passing game. So, I mean, and every time McCaffrey touched the ball on the ground, it seemed like he was getting 6 to 7 yards plus. So they had no answer for him. Now you get Debo back, who's had kind of a down year, honestly, right, Jake? Based on his standards. I think McCaffrey kind of opens it up for them. And then Elijah Mitchell, like I said, coming in, kind of being thunder and lightning in a sense. And then you don't have too much wear and tear on both of them. And you still can throw in one of those rookie running backs. And you have Debo who can run the ball. And you get Juszczyk back, best fullback in the game. So a lot of things are coming back for them, man. So that win was big last week. Get fresh, get healthy, and see how the end season goes.
Yeah, for sure. Let's look into that this upcoming weekend. Your Niners are on a bye. A lot of teams on a bye this weekend. Which of these games kind of sticks out to you as things to keep an eye
on? So I would say, honestly, Jake, we saw what happened with the Eagles last night. Remained undefeated, did their thing. I'm really looking at the Packers to kind of get a win. They need one. If they lose this one to Detroit, that's going to be ugly over there, especially after not going out and getting a receiver in the trade deadline. You're basically just saying, hey, sorry, Aaron, this is what you got, man. Make it work, right? I look for Derek Carr to bounce back in that offense, getting shut out by the Saints. They got to definitely do some things against the Jags. Bills and Jets will be kind of, the Bills have had the Jets' hand over the last, few years. So I think the Jets are competitive. They have Sauce Gardner on the outside. We'll see how they look against Josh Allen. Seahawks and Cardinals is going to be a great matchup. And then the Rams and Bucks. See how Tom Brady almost.
Each team needs a win bad.
Do you feel bad for Tom Brady? I don't know if I do. But he's just kind of. They just don't have that. They don't have that. That fire. Not they don't play with that fire.
I watched that game last week on Thursday, and it looked like there were some offensive receiver issues and miscommunication, but also there were some throws by Brady that you wouldn't expect. Some throws of the feet in the ground that I think just the team and himself are not quite clicking at the level they have the last couple of years.
Yes, and then you got the Titans and the Chiefs to cap Sunday night. Should be a good game. I don't know if Tannehill's back for the Titans, but Derrick Henry looked really good last week. So Chiefs coming off a bye week, Andy Reid will have that package going, a couple of trick plays on the goal line. They're going to try to open up the playbook. And then you got Tooney, right, over there, see how they kind of utilize that new weapon, see if they can get him involved. But we'll talk about the trades a little bit in a second, though.
Yeah, for sure. And you just mentioned the trades are going to be a key factor this weekend. Some were already a key factor last weekend as well. But let's get into it then. So we're going to recap now the top trades, most notable. And it was a very active Monday and Tuesday right before the deadline, a record. I think it was 10 trades made right before the deadline.
Wow.
Going into it, which is more than double what we've seen in the past. But we got about 8 of these notable ones that we're going to hit on. So let's start with one of the most desired, commodities that was out there, requested being traded before the year, finally got traded. I wish we would have gotten this guy in Seattle, but Roquan Smith goes to the Ravens. Bears receive a couple draft picks and AJ Klein as well. I think this is what the Ravens need, kind of faltering defense, a little spark on that side of the ball as well. They've had some injuries and anything to help support that offense, which has kind of been up and down as well as of late. I think this is a good trade for both sides. Obviously, it seems like now with Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith being traded out. Chicago's kind of in a little bit of a rebuild, preparing for next year, already giving us some cap space. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like this one. So, Ray Lewis, you got to think of that. They haven't had a really guy like that. I know Patrick Queen has been solid, but still kind of struggles in the run at points. So you insert a guy like Roquan Smith, who's a leading tackler in the NFL, I believe. Just plays a great instinct, sideline to sideline tackler, and a really good vocal leader. I think it's exactly what the Ravens need in the middle of the defense, who has a lot of good weapons in front, in the front four, but also in the back end. They have some experienced guys, but they're kind of missing that guy in the middle to kind of bring everything together on the defensive end. So this was a really good pickup for the Ravens.
No, agreed. The next one, again, we're going in order of kind of how they happened. Next is TJ Hawkinson goes to the Vikings in exchange for a couple draft picks as well. And inside the division trade, Irv Smith he's basically out for the year,
right.
With an injury. So a team that's, a one-loss Vikings team could see a good push in the playoffs if they keep playing well. Filling in that tight end spot that they now have lost with an athletic former first-round player. I think this is good for the Vikings, kind of help supplement that one spot and now have weapons at on the outside, at running back still, and at tight end again. They don't lose that dynamic piece of the offense. But Lions struggling this year, again, kind of stockpiling draft picks a little bit with a second and third. They do have Jameson Williams probably coming back, hopefully in a few weeks. Finally, making his debut off his ACL injury last year in Alabama. But so they'll pick up a weapon there. But yeah, give us your thoughts real quick.
Yes, great match, a great fit for Hawkinson over in Minnesota, because Kirk Cousins historically loves to use the tight ends. And with Irv Smith out for extended period of time, you insert TJ right in there, who's a great blocker, but also can be dynamic in the passing game as well. He's seen that. He's a big, good red zone threat as well, which again, Cousins loves to target the tight ends in the red zone, goal line, play action. He's going to feast in that offense, I believe, especially when Irv Smith gets back as they make a playoff run. You have a great 1-2 punch at tight end.
Yeah, agreed. The next one up, Chase Claypool. He was on the trade block as well.
Wow.
Goes to Chicago. It was notable that they were kind of asking for a lot, and they got a second-round pick for him. Again, Steelers, they've got weapons, right? They got Najee Harris in the backfield. They got Deontay Johnson, and they got their draft pick George Pickens, who now can probably have a little more room to shine with less company around him. But what does this do for the Bears, right? Is this obviously they've given away their two biggest defensive weapons, but they pick up an offensive weapon. Is this them trying to build a little continuity for next year? Right now they have Mooney and Claypool and trying to develop Fields the remainder of the year going the next year, or are they just looking for short-term success as well?
No, I think they're trying to add for the long term. I think Claypool has shown that he's versatile. He can get the reverses. He can catch the deep ball. He's good after the catch. But he's just kind of, last couple of years hasn't been great for him. He had a really good rookie year. But I think some of the things, after, last year, that loss where he didn't kind of celebrate it and stuff like that with Tomlin doesn't really sit well, I believe. And they also have weapons on the outside in Pittsburgh that they feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. So that's probably why if you can get a good return for him like they did, they might as well take it. And I think Justin Fields, who's been kind of, fighting for that dynamic playmaker who potentially Claypool could be, that helps him a lot in terms of his development over in Chicago.
Yeah, no, for sure. Give him a little bit of a chance to have some more success and give him some weapons to develop with. Next was William Jackson from Washington, gets traded to the Steelers. Yeah, a lot of talk. I think either way, it's I just sound like Jackson wasn't a fit anymore in Washington, so they only took a 6th rounder for him.
Right.
And so, and they give away, Washington gives away another 6th round pick as well. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a wash in my eyes. I think it's just the Steelers with kind of a, kind of a need, a little bit, a little bit in depth and support on the defensive back end on that kind of struggling defense over the last few weeks of the season.
Yeah, TJ Watt can get healthy. You would think that can help, but you saw what the Eagles did to him last week with AJ Brown, and they had no answer. And then even a few weeks prior to that against Buffalo, I believe. I mean, they just give up way too many deep plays on defense that I'm not used to seeing. So yeah, trying to get some type of depth over in that third level for Pittsburgh.
Yep. Now on to the most arguably notable trade for the deadline. Bradley Chubb goes to Miami.
Man.
In exchange for a couple draft picks, and Chase Edmonds gets sent to Denver as well as part of the deal. But on the Denver side, again, I think they're getting rid of some of that salary cap space and working for next year. Surprised they didn't actually move KJ Hamler or Jerry Jeudy at the deadline as well. But also need some help at running back support. But the bigger note here is, Chubb to Miami. What does this do for him? Does it, right now they're pushing for the playoffs, obviously, but now there's talk. Does this make them a contender for it all at the end of the year? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I like. Don't get me wrong. Bradley Chubb is a great edge player, but I mean, production hasn't been, in my eyes, hasn't been that eye popping. I mean, I think he has like a career,
He's having a great season this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But historically, you're right.
About 20 sacks, maybe at that, in a 4-year span. So, I mean, yeah, he's maybe, I think, a little bit out of position over there in Denver, but now he gets to go to a very similar defensive concept as the Niners use over the years. So I think he'll kind of open up there, and he still had he had a strong year. I know he's missed some time with injuries previously, but so that factors into his numbers. But overall, from a pure all-in perspective, he's a perfect complement to this defense. And with Tua playing how he is, and they got Tyreek and Waddle, great outside threats. I think this is a great push to get them over the hump in terms of everything you need to compete in the AFC against the guys like Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson as well. Like, you need to be able to do that. So yeah, man, they got their edge rusher who they needed.
Yeah, I think it can make a huge impact based on the fact that their secondary has been hurt. Byron Jones and Xavier Howard have kind of up and down season, been in and out due to injury, and so if you're able to get a pass rusher to rush that quarterback with guys like Mahomes and Allen on that side of the ball, it eases the pressure on the back end as well. But the next one, it's kind of an interesting one. I don't think a lot of people are expecting. Calvin Ridley gets traded to Jacksonville, and again, the reason for the intrigue here is he's suspended the whole year with that gambling suspension. So obviously he's not. They're not able to make use of him right away, but this is more of a long-term play. Do you think he has? We've never really seen him in a wide receiver one role, right? I think 2020 was the last significant year he had, good stats, but still has kind of a number two with Julio Jones still there. Last year, he only plays a handful of games, gets hurt. This year, suspended. So it will be a while before we see him play again and before he's able to play. But Falcons still kind of rebuilding. They're able to get something for something that get draft picks for something they're not able to utilize right now. So I think the Falcons ended up on the better side of this deal than Jacksonville did. They're over the last year, their wide receiver selection with paying Christian Kirk what they did, and now Ridley. I still don't think they have a legitimate wide receiver one option, but trying to just give weapons to Lawrence to make him successful. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's investing in a young quarterback. They got Christian Kirk, who they did had before. Some other threats that are on the receiving end, Marvin Jones as well. So, yeah, they got Ridley, who could potentially be a number one, depending on how he comes back from this long period off. I think as long as his everything's right with him, I think he's a great receiver, and he'll complement that system really well over in Jacksonville.
Yeah, no, I can see it happening, but again, like I said, just interesting.
Unpredictable. It's
What
unpredictable.
they're doing. Yeah, unpredictable is a good way to put it. The last one we want to kind of just hit on again. This isn't all of them. Just some of the most notable. Almost a one-for-one running back swap. Zach Moss goes to the Colts in exchange for Naheem Hines. I think this is good for the Colts because they get probably a little more of a complete back now with Jonathan Taylor. I just got ruled as out again for this weekend. The injury problems he has this year, so he'll be able to fill in there. But on the Bills side, I thought this was an interesting pickup of why they would go after Himes. I know they wanted to go after JD McKissick in free agency before the drafts, but you have Singletary there. You drafted James Cook, who's almost can be in that passing role position as a rookie, who's very dynamic and has some success for the last few weeks. What do you make of them? I haven't figured it out yet, so that's my take on him. So a great player in Hines, but just interesting why you now have almost two of the same player and giving up a draft pick for two of the same kind of players. What are your thoughts, or why do you think they made this pick? Is it lack of confidence in Cook, or is it just a win now mentality with them and trying to get more proven backs to complement things?
I think they're just trying to shore up a weakness in insurance policy as well, going deep into the playoffs and Super Bowl. They want to have some type of running threat or threat out of the backfield. I think Singletary has had strong games in the past, but he just hasn't been dynamic enough for what they need, even though they don't need much. But I think a running back, a valuable running back will definitely help, make that offense more potent. So they're trying to get a veteran in here like Hines, who maybe could, bring Cooks along if they don't believe in maybe Singletary in the long term. And you can kind of see like what Kansas City is maybe trying to do, have like three running backs kind of go by committee, excuse me. So, they are kind of all similar, a little bit different in a sense, and they provide different skill set. But I just think it's, the Bills is trying to reach for some type of help out the backfield, Jake.
No, that makes sense. I agree. I mean, insurance policy, I think Singletary has had some, injury issues in the past. So, just gearing up for a playoff run. Real quick, one last thing I want to ask you. We went over the trades that did happen. Were there any trades that you wanted to see happen that you were expecting, or any teams that you thought would make moves that didn't? That's kind of surprised you.
Yeah. First off is obviously the Packers not going for a receiver, maybe like Claypool or Jared Judy. I don't know, someone. I thought they were definitely trying to get a receiver. Who else am I looking at? Maybe like LA Rams, for example. I know they tried, but usually they're known to kind of put all their cash in and kind of put all their chips to the center of the table and go all in. They didn't make any big moves. Who else, Jake? I'm thinking maybe the Browns as well. I know it's kind of coming off a win like that, and they're still in it in the AFC. They're still in it, so I was maybe thinking they might try to get a receiver. But overall, those are like the Packers. Definitely, I was expecting a little bit more from.
Yeah, no, the ones that obviously the Packers, right? Injuries right now are hurting them at the wide receiver position, so they badly needed one. The players, as I'm looking it up right now on my list, that I thought would be moved, that haven't been, is you got guys like Kareem Hunt and Cam Akers, two running backs who had big talks about being moved. Nothing happens there. Sound like the asking prices might have been too high for other teams to go win on them. Another guy for me was Mike Gesicki, right? There's been a lot of talk about him. I think he could have really helped the team, fill in like with the Giants who just lost their tight end or something like that, make moves. Again, that's kind of surprising to me in terms of the team. Giants didn't make any moves at all. It still feels like to me that they're not seeing this as a win now thing, that they're still looking into next year, saving up draft picks, which I can understand. And then I'm going to say the Seahawks, because I think we're in a better position and we're in the playoff hunt. Obviously, we're number one, but long season to go. I would have liked to see a play for like a Roquan Smith or an outside backer who's a little more dynamic as an outside backer with our 3-4 scheme, because we have one side of the ball or one side of the field with Nwosu shirt up, who's playing great.
Right.
Guys with Taylor and Mafe and stuff. Great players, but they're more pass rushers than they are in a 3-4 outside backer. So couple moves like that I would have liked to see us make just to kind of give us an extra boost going into the rest of the season. But yeah, those are the ones that kind of, I was surprised didn't happen, or more wasn't made of it. So but yeah, any more takes on the trade deadline before we close this show out?
No, I think it was a historic trade deadline, even with guys like McCaffrey and Bradley Chubb and all the big names that went. That was pretty exciting as a football fan, right? Especially for my Niners, like to be able to make a big move like that, and it's going to be exciting for not only this year but the years to come.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of these moves are going to have a big impact on the last part of the year and in the playoffs as well. So, Scott, as always, thanks for joining me. Glad to always talk about this news and stuff with you. A lot of big events this past weekend. We got a big weekend coming up in college and the NFL moving forward. So looking forward to see how these rankings in college play out and how these trades play out as well at the NFL level. So again, if you like this show, please like, subscribe, and follow us on here on all our social media channels as well. We'd love to hear your comments from you. Get your thoughts and takes on everything we talk about every week. And we do have, we'll be back next week with another great show planned for you. So, Scott, until then, we'll close it out. We'll get on with this crazy weekend coming up in the world of football, and wish you the best of luck and all of our clients as we go into the playoff week as well, the high school level. Big weeks for them as they move forward. So, which means another big weekend for Scott and the analyst team as well. Close out the season strong. So, Scott, any final words?
Yeah, like you said, man, playoff push for a lot of our clients here at Atavus. So shout out to them. Just keep on pushing it, man. Keep on tackling well, playing great defense. We're excited to watch you guys and help you in all your adventures in terms of getting to your goals and stuff. We love that. And then, yeah, we're excited for the college football, NFL. There's a lot of good football this weekend as things kind of get into the holidays. So really excited, Jake. I'll see you next week, and we'll be able to unpack a lot of this drama. I'm gonna anticipate some drama over the next few days.
I think so. I think that's a good prediction right there. So, guys, until next week, thanks for joining us. We'll be back again. Until then, we're out.
All right, thanks, guys. Peace, Jake.